Hey, welcome to this live episode of Think Business Live. Looking forward to talking with Edgar Blazona. Edward, it's great to connect with you. You're the president and founder of BenchMade Modern. Just a quick bio on you. You're a modernist American furniture designer, founder of the wildly popular DTC sofa brand, BenchMade Modern. You're a high school dropout, turned graffiti artist, turned serial entrepreneur. You got your start in the furniture industry because of a need that you were young and broke, and your first apartment had no furniture, so you taught yourself how to build some. I love that story. Let's talk about, so you're young, you're broke, you have no furniture. Where did the idea and then the execution? Like, take me to the birth.
Man, it's like 25 years ago. It seems forever. I grew up in San Francisco, right? So I grew up in this environment. Back then, it wasn't quite the gold rush that it is today, right? It was a little bit more blue collar and all that. And I grew up in a construction family, and I had an apartment. I left high school, left my house at 16, 17, something like that. Trying to get by, and I got this apartment, and I was a little bit of an artist, a designer, and I thought, I can't afford to buy any furniture. Maybe I can make it. And I got a welder, and this is before YouTube. I'm trying to push these two things together and hope I don't blow myself up, electrocute myself, and all that. But I figured it out, and I made some furniture, and there's these little galleries here in town, or was little galleries here in town. And I was in one of them one day, and I said, hey, they're like, well, what are you doing in here, kid? And I said, well, I like your stuff. I made some stuff myself. And they said, maybe we could sell it for you. Let us see it. So I came back with my Polaroid. I mean, that's how dated that is. I came back with a Polaroid. I showed them, and they loved it. And I gave it to them Friday, and it sold by Monday. And that's the start of my career right there.
I love it. I love it. So let's talk about, I just want to kind of dive into this journey of leaving your house at 16, 17 years old. I have a 16 and 19-year-old, soon to be 17 and 20. And it's so hard to comprehend that they would actually do that. And so how did that happen?
Oh man, I think about that too. I have a 20-year-old, and when he was about 16, I'm looking at him.
Can you imagine?
I'm thinking, dude, you are a little kid that doesn't know jack about anything. I grew up in a household that my mother was like, a single mom. You're gonna have to be independent. You're gonna have to learn how to do it all. I think that kind of backfired on her a bit, because by I was 14, I was making lists of what I needed to have to live elsewhere, and how much money would cost and all that. I was already dreaming up that scenario. And then I left, and I mean, I wouldn't say that it was easy. I was a dumb kid. I was a little bit of a punk ass criminal for a minute. I was just trying to get by. I was trying to get by in a big city. I was a graffiti artist, and so I was in this kind of other side of the tracks as it was already. Although I came from a family that, had plenty of money and all that. I wasn't interested in all that. And I figured I could do it myself. And it allowed me the freedom to also be that punk ass kid. And so I just did it,
You did it. Well, you know what? There's something to be said about being resourceful and just doing it. And as you started just doing it, walk the Think community through kind of the doing it to really the formalization of actually turning it into a business that was then a business that you understood you could monetize and you could scale, and then you needed to layer in the marketing and the I mean, you look at your website, for example, and it sure doesn't, I mean, it's such a beautiful site, and the furniture that you make is so beautiful. So just kind of walk us through a little bit of the journey of benchmademodern.com.
Sure. Stepping back just a hair, it took a while, right? And at one point, I had a small cabinet shop. I was trying to figure out how to do it. I had an employee or two. I'm pushing wood through a saw over and over and over again. And I'm thinking literally in my head, I'm never going to have that lake house that I've been dreaming of this
Yeah.
down. I got a job at Pottery Barn. I pushed and pulled and, weaseled my way into the factory so I could see like what a factory looked like. Like, did they have 1,000 table saws or did they have some German machine that did it themselves? All of that. And those steps kind of became my college and brought me through and really brought me through to what BenchMade Modern became. And I started a brand, True Modern, early on, early before DT was really a thing and around. And I started selling direct and that not because it was a cool thing, but because if I sold $1,000 item, I actually got to keep a lot more money, right? It was like that kind of thing. So how do I cut out this wholesale dumb business? And so that kind of forced BenchMade, or it kind of brought me to BenchMade. And really what BenchMade was it's a brand about, the best stuff under the hood, right? Like how can I bring a product to market that has incredible materials, not because I necessarily want you to have incredible materials, but because I don't want your return, right? I don't want to hear from you ever again. But once I've kind of sold you that furniture, I certainly don't want you coming back in 2 years and saying, well, this spring broke because I cheaped out a little bit. So that was kind of like a selfish strategy of becoming what I consider myself sofa king these days. I make a really, really good online sofa, and I'll put it up against any other online sofa, and we will win for sure.
Yes. So let's talk about that. You custom make these in as little as 2 weeks. And so in a time right now where things take, I know a couple of years ago we ordered a new couch. I think it took 3 to 5 months to get it.
Yeah.
So how are you able to do it in less than 2 weeks?
Man, I would love to talk about this, right? So I would go to these dinner parties with you, and you would be sitting across from me. You would say, I ordered this sofa and it took 6 months, and why does this happen? And this would happen to me all the time, right? The furniture guy would come to dinner. And I was like, why does that happen? And I would go to these little shops and I'd watch them make a sofa in a day or two. These little shops, 3 or 4 days. So why does it take 6 months? So when I started BenchMade Modern, we were making custom by the inch sofas in as little as 24 hours. Literally, you could pay like $200 or $300 more and you could get your sofa made in 24 hours. It turns out that it takes about 6 hours in a factory environment. It takes about 6 hours to actually make the sofa, right? So why 6 months? It's 6 months because first of all, there's a line out the door. Why is there a line out the door? It's not necessarily because they're so popular that they have a line out the door. It's because somewhere along the way, they sold you a red sofa. They had no idea if they had red fabric when they sold it to you. Turns out the mill doesn't have red fabric, and it's going to take 6 weeks, 6 months for the mill to make the red fabric. So you've got all these people, and in the meantime, I'm coming back to you and saying, I'm sorry, sir, your sofa is going to be another 6 months due to, some sort of supply chain. When all along, I just should have not sold you a sofa in red because we don't have that fabric. So those are the things that I set out to change right from the beginning. It's very trendy to say, let's be the most transparent business, right? But kind of in the furniture industry, it needed it, and that's what I set out to do, and we did it, and so really what I'm doing is I'm keeping the line small. I'll tell you a funny little story about that 24-hour thing. It turns out the reason why I don't have that today, and the hack for that moment is I would just move you to the front of the line, right? I would reserve space and move it to the front of the line, and that's how I can make it in 24 hours. But it turns out that people don't think the quality is good enough. How could restoration hardware be 6 months and you're making it in 24 hours? It's got to be a crappy sofa. So it turns out that it doesn't work to sell sofas custom in as little as 24 hours.
So how do you change that? How do you shift that? Make it 2 weeks, and then is that the time frame people think it can still be custom?
Yeah, I found that, we've shifted up and down, and we shifted, for all kinds of reasons, not just, some of it's, supply chain and whatnot. But what we found is that the manufacturing has to be around the same time. The days of manufacturing has to be somewhat similar to the shipping, right? You can't make the sofa faster or much faster than shipping. 10 days seems to be the magic number. So if
Yeah.
you 10 days for shipping, 10 days for manufacturing, you add another 10 days for shipping, and that seems about right. I don't need that much time, but it does seem about right.
Yeah, I love it. That's a great story. Let me ask you this: what's something you would tell your 16-year-old self today?
Oh my God. What would I tell my 16-year-old self today? Uh, Prepare for a long haul, right? I,
Yeah,
I think most startup founders set themselves into business thinking they're going to be rich tomorrow.
yeah,
And Mark Zuckerberg and Sergey, those guys were all rich, tomorrow. It's not the case. If you go back and you look at most businesses, it's a
right,
ride before you start doing anything, well. And I think that perception and watching the people around us, make the bazillions of dollars, I think it takes a long time. I'm
right.
fortunate to have stayed in the same industry the entire time. So I haven't pivoted, into the yogurt franchise and then this and that. I've been a furniture business for life, right?
Yeah,
And so I think that gives me an advantage. I didn't necessarily know it was going to be like that, um, but that's what I think I'd tell myself.
right. If you were to teach a college course on business and entrepreneurship, which is very, common right now, the major of entrepreneurship, what would your class be called?
Do it first, draw it later.
Yeah, yeah. Sell the tickets, then make the movie.
Mm, Maybe not. Maybe I don't know if that's exactly right. I think my theory is that people spend so much time on a business plan. People spend so much time on, in my case, drawing these beautiful things that frankly can't be made. And it's everybody has a dream like that. I'm gonna put this business down on paper, and that's gonna be a bazillion-dollar business. But if you can't get from paper to, like, out in the street,
Right.
then what is it? And so I don't think we should spend so much time in business school. I think business school does a little bit of a disservice in that regards. We don't necessarily teach the actual working.
Yeah. I agree.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's a little bit too much, on paper. and
Right.
and for me, it's build it first, draw it later,
Yeah.
literally.
No, I love it. Right. Well, it's like, it's like I feel exactly the same way because they teach a lot of theory, but you really learn it hands on, and you got to be in the throes of things.
Yeah,
And I just listened to a master's class, masterclass.com. I take a lot of classes, and Sarah Blakely, from who created Spanx, was on it, and I took her master class. And she had no business experience, didn't go to business school. She was selling fax machines. She wasn't in the fashion industry, but she saw a need. She built it, and then she built a plan. Yeah.
yeah.
So you know what I mean?
Yes.
So
I remember when
yeah,
I started growing, and I come from that build it first, mentality, and I'm like looking
right,
around, who to hire. So I'm going on
right,
LinkedIn, bigger companies, looking at their job, descriptions. Like, do I need a, visual graphics architect supervisor? Do I need a, all these things that I really had no idea. I do think, though, there's a fine line. I sometimes in the room feel a little bit outgunned. I'm
hmm
a spreadsheet guy. I'm not the the finance guy. I can weasel my way around it, but I have to work at that a little harder. That said, I know what my strengths are, and my strengths is, building, making, designing, brand creation, and all that. I'll just have to hire that smart dude.
Yeah.
But
No, I
at
love
the
it. I love it.
necessarily that dude,
Yeah.
and I wish I had a little more of that.
Yeah. All right. I love it. All right. Quick speed round. You ready?
Yep.
Is there a book that's had the biggest impact on you?
I don't read books.
Okay. Best piece of wisdom you've ever received?
Best what? Piece of wisdom?
Best piece of wisdom you've ever received.
Let's see. Ask for advice, get money. Ask for money, get advice.
That's a good one. Last question. Finish this sentence. One thing every entrepreneur needs to do more of is?
Everything an entrepreneur. Repeat the question one more time.
One thing every entrepreneur needs to do more of is?
Breathe. Breathe. A long game, and there's so many ups and downs. I have a second. I actually talked through this quite a bit because there's, especially in a startup, type business, there's such highs, and then there's such crashing lows. And the same day you're like, I'm on top of the world, and then the next day I'm closing my business, or on the same exact day or the same hour, whatever. And if we can learn to ride the center and not go so high and not go so low, we'll be there for the long haul.
Yeah. I read a book a long time ago called Mastery, and it talked about the ideal is to live on the plateau, right? So you avoid the roller coaster highs and lows. And I agree with what you're saying. That book had a big impact. I read it like 25 years ago. And I think about it often, about just kind of living here, not getting too up here and too down there, getting back to center as fast as you can. It's a lot easier to get back to center when you're breathing, if you can live on that level. So I love it.
It took me a long time to figure that out.
Yeah, that's great.
A lot of crying in my soup and a lot of thinking I was going to all on the same day, and I couldn't take it, and it was too much for me, too much for my family, and all that. It took a while, and once I kind of mastered that, and I think that takes time, and it takes growth.
Yeah, I agree. Tell everybody who your ideal clients are, Edgar, and how they can connect with you, your website, and all of that.
My ideal clients are the people that are looking for, a really good, long-lasting quality sofa, right? We make the best stuff. And really, if you go on my Twitter account, which is where you can reach me, Edgar Blazona at Twitter, you'll find my pinned tweet at the very top. It's kind of like an old school call out. Yo, other sofa companies, and I know they're all following me. You give your best stuff to a rider. I'll give my best stuff to a rider. Whoever wins is crowned Sofa King publicly. And I stand by that, right? Old school style. Let's battle, and no one wants
I love it.
No one wants to do that. So find me at Twitter, Edgar Blazona, BenchMadeModern.com. Check us out, order some free swatches, all that. You'll be impressed.
I love it. I love it. Edgar, I love this talk. I appreciate you taking time to, connect with me and take time to talk about your business. Think community, BenchMadeModern.com. I always like to, as a business coach, Edgar, I work with successful people who are stuck and get them unstuck. And so I always look to kind of extract a minimum of one thing to point out as people are listening to this and where they think they can get themselves unstuck. And what I'm going to suggest is that one of the things I took from you, and I'm going to suggest to the Think community, is, the energy of what you're talking about, which is jump in and, just kind of follow your instincts. And you don't have to know everything, just start. And I love your story. And I'm going to continue to follow your, just your business, because it was great to hear and great to connect with you. Think community, if Edgar's company can help you, BenchMadeModern.com. If I can help you, JohnDwoskin.com. Edgar, it was a pleasure. Thanks, man. Appreciate your time.
as well. Edgar Blazona on Twitter. You can find me there. I'm happy to, give some advice, check some stuff out. I'm super into giving back.
Love it. I love it. Me too. Thanks, man.
Thank you.